Mean Old Lion Media presents Corner Table Talk.
Well, welcome everyone to Corner Table Talk. I'm your host, Brad Johnson. Here we explore subjects related to food, drink, and culture. I moved to Los Angeles from New York City in 1989. My plan was to open something in hospitality. That led to Roxbury. For those of you who were too young or not familiar, was a 3-level blues lounge restaurant and dance club in the heart of West Hollywood, just below the famous Chateau Marmont on Sunset Strip. Pre-opening, the place was shaping up well and the buzz was building, but we needed a DJ for the dance club, but not just any DJ, one who could blend East and West Coast music and keep the dance floor moving. And for me, there was only one person that could do that, and that was Matt Robinson. I'd read about Matt, I think in People magazine, and then realized that our dads knew one another. Matt's dad was an accomplished actor, writer, and producer on Sesame Street, The Cosby Show, and one of my all-time favorites, Captain Kangaroo. I'm aging myself here, but I'm not ashamed. So I reached out to Matt and he agreed to help launch Roxbury. He took over the turntables and proceeded to rock the house in a style that was purely his own, mixing hip hop with Pink Floyd and Roy Ayers and packing the dance floor on a nightly basis. I soon got to know the Robinson family, which included Mom Delores, a powerhouse talent manager, and beautiful sister Holly, or as we would say back in the day, fine as hell, Sister Holly. Star of the hit TV show 21 Jump Street. Eventually, the beautiful actress married the handsome star quarterback, and Holly Robinson became Holly Robinson Peete, wife of Rodney Peete, and together became parents of 4 and a prolific power couple. Their annual summer evening Holly Rod events that raise money and bring awareness to autism and Parkinson's, a couple of causes very near to both of them, attract stars from across the spectrum and is one of the most fun and worthwhile nights of the summer. Holly is a tireless spokesperson. The Holly Rod Foundation, founded in 1997 in honor of Holly's father, provides help and hope to those living with autism and Parkinson's. A multi-talented artist, actress, singer. I didn't know about the singer part. That was new to me. Host and author. Her book, My Brother Charlie, won her an NAACP Image Award for outstanding literary work. And Holly is no slouch. Holly graduated from Sarah Lawrence College with a degree in psychology and French. She is a beloved daughter, sister, mom, and wife. Holly and Rod just returned from a dream vacation, and she looks fantastic. We're going to hear a little bit about that. Holly Robinson Peete, so great to have you here at Corner Table Talk. Welcome.
Welcome to you too, into my life. I love listening to this story. You know, you learn a lot when you hear people talk about you, and you just sort of remember things. I am so glad to talk to you, Brad. It's been too long, and this is an awesome way to get caught up.
Yeah, it really is. And it's just so great to just see your face. It just brings up so much for me. And I'm so fond of you and your family. So we start things off here, Holly, with what I call short order questions, just to get our conversation rolling. So I'll fire a few off at you and get your reaction. So what are you listening to or reading these days?
Wow. I am listening to a lot of things. I always listen to old school music. I was raised on, so many amazing artists, R&B artists in Philadelphia growing up. I have a very eclectic music taste. My father raised me on Louis Jordan and Ray Charles and a lot of blues. And so I'm always listening to a lot of things. I do have a couple mixes, and playlists that I put on just to really lift my spirits. And I always seem to gravitate to sort of women in the, late 70s, early 80s, singers, like the Tina Marie's,
Shaka, Minnie,
Phyllis Hyman, even there's some Sister Sledge songs that really get me going. So, and as you know, you mentioned my brother being a DJ, and we just grew up around so much music. We used to some kids would play, cops and robbers. We used to play Jackson 5 and Sly and the Family Stone. So growing up in Philly, it was just such a rich cultural time. So it's so hard to answer that question. I know it was supposed to be a short order question, but it's so hard. But I would say today, I try to keep up with my kids, Brad. So they're 23, 18, and 16. And Rodney and I both try to keep up with them. Rodney will listen to some of the more harder core stuff, trying to be the old player in the club. And I will listen to more like the Janae Aiko and more of the, more of these artists that are sort of kind of have a neo soul energy that speaks to me. So I'm listening to a lot of Janae Aiko, and I'm reading biographies, as many as I can gobble up. On vacation recently, I finally finished the Michelle Obama one, which I've been trying to read for a while. And I also love listening to audiobooks now. And Trevor Noah's audiobook is number one on my list.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good one. I'm going to have to check that out.
That was a long order answer.
No, it's all right. Ding, time's up.
Yep.
So tell me, Holly, a perfect weekend breakfast at your place.
Oh, I love pancakes. I need those edges crispy, which usually involves butter and high heat. I really have given up a lot of pork and stuff, but I do love some sausage. We used to eat scrapple back in Philadelphia. I never knew what it was made of. I don't know. I still don't to this day.
I don't think anybody does.
It's some kind of sausage patty thing, and it was good. All I know is good. So pancakes, scrapple, maybe some shrimp and grits.
I like that. Yeah, I made, I do grits and eggs and biscuits on Sunday. And I tried I've been trying veggie sausage lately, just to try to get that little mapley sausage flavor in there. It's not quite the same, but a lot less guilt.
Yes, but I'm telling you, some of these alternative meat products are pretty good. I've been eating a lot of Beyond Meat, and the sausages, like the breakfast sausages, are really good. So once you got your maple syrup on your pancakes and you roll that in, like I can do that.
Yeah, it's pork adjacent, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Holly. So tell me the best live musical performance that you've ever seen.
Well, I have to go to my very first one, which was Jackson 5 at the Spectrum in Philadelphia, because you never forget your first concert. Seeing your idols perform in front of you for the very first time is a revelation, and that was for me. But one of the most amazing shows I've ever seen live has got to be Jill Scott and Erykah Badu. They were on the stage at Essence Fest one year, and it was unbelievable. I wasn't prepared for their set, and the Roots were playing with them too. And it was a trio that I didn't know I needed in my life. And I hope that I don't think they have an album together, but I wish they would have recorded that one live. Yeah,
that sounds phenomenal. All right. So tell me a quality that you most value in a friend.
Oh, loyalty. Loyalty is so important. Being a vault. If I can talk to you about anything and not worry about you taking it someplace else and it being a whisper down the lane situation, that is such a blessing to have.
Yeah. My friend used to say a good friend keeps you off of the Negro news.
Yeah, you do not want to be the top story on that news.
No, not on that network. Best piece of advice you've been given?
I would say the first thing that comes to my mind, it would be advice from my mother, which was always be good to the crew. And I mean, in terms of career advice, and the crew will be good to you. Is what she would tell me before any project. If you treat them well, the people that get there before you, that leave after you and make a whole lot less money than you, they take that, you talk about, whisper down the lane. They take their experience with you to their next job. And, what would you just work on? Oh, I worked with Holly Robinson. Oh, how was she? That's how this goes. And so when I walk onto a set, I speak to the crew, I speak to the background actors. And that's because my mom has always told me to walk on those sets and give them the love and respect. And they will return that, and you'll get it in ways down the line in your career. And I do think that that's paid off for me.
That's that Delores Robinson coaching, man. You know, that's invaluable stuff right there. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Most memorable Holly Rod Foundation event. And I have to tell you, one of the last ones that, well, several years ago, actually, going back now, because this was before he took office, I saw Trump at one of your events. I know your mom was friendly with him, and a lot's changed, since then, or we've come to know him a little bit differently since then. But I just remember seeing him walk through.
Yes. So, okay, well, let's start with the most memorable. That was not it for me, but we have had some iconic moments with this event, Design Care, which we started doing almost 25 years ago. So we're about to finally, we got postponed in 2020, but we're about to do in 2021, but we're about to do our 24th annual Design Care in 2022. That said, there were so many, and I remember seeing your smiling face in the audience, always coming and supporting us. Stevie Wonder, how do you, that was one of the first, he was one of the first artists that came and donated his services for us. And he came back the next year after Sarita had just passed away. And that was one of the loves of his life. And he still came anyway. So I would say early Design Cares, the Stevie Wonder sets were legendary. My father had just, passed around that time. And so it was a really intense time for him and for us as a foundation, and he showed up. So that's one. But then the other number one, I say, iconic moment would be when our foundation, Holly Rod, was struggling. Like, we didn't think we were going to be able to stay afloat. And Muhammad Ali showed up. Now, when the greatest of all time shows up at your event and you're struggling, and he just opens his mouth and says, I support Holly Rod and support this, that was all we needed. And it propelled us into basically to now. And that was, almost 20 years ago. And so people, icons like Stevie and so many others that have showed up, whether it was Jill Scott or Roberto Cavalli, because it's a fashion, portion of this too, or The Time, Jeffrey Osborne. So many amazing artists have been there for us. Natalie Cole. When I go down the list, I can't believe that some of these amazing artists show up. But let me just tell you why Trump was there, because I know your listeners are going to be like, okay, why was Trump at Design Care? So what had happened was I was on Celebrity Apprentice. Mm-hmm. And on that show, in that year, I believe it was 2010 or 2011, I didn't quote unquote win. Bret Michaels quote unquote won, but I outraised him 2-1. I raised $600,000 for Holly Rod that year. And then at the, during the summertime, we're putting together Design Care, and our board was like, well, we need to honor someone who has been supportive of Holly Rod. And, what do y'all think about honoring Donald Trump? Because he, was on this show, and he didn't write the check to us. Let's be clear. That was the sponsors and NBC. Mm-hmm. But that was a big amount of money. That was way more than our annual budget. And it was a significant moment. So as board members voted that we would honor him, but we didn't think he would say yes. And he did. And he showed up. So to this day, I still have people asking me, why was Donald Trump at Design Care? And that's why.
Yeah, it's funny because I think we all had, those of us who knew, I grew up in New York, so I'm used to seeing him in the tabloids way before he became a presidential candidate or started going at Barack and all of that. But we just had a different memory of him back then. And what we've come to know since then is a whole nother podcast, whole nother, episode. So we can leave it there.
He was, entrenched in Black culture in a way too. Like we embraced him in our songs, and he was like, the quintessential guy that we, talked about as the rich guy. And he was self-deprecating, and there was something kind of almost charming, dare I say, about him. And then I don't know what happened after that. But like you said, that's a whole nother podcast. Yeah.
Thank you. And, too, Holly, I have to say that, going to those nights, those events that you would have, the highlight, I think, for most of us was you and Rodney together. You guys, it's like you're just such a great act on stage. You're so quick with one another, and I'm sure you must have rehearsed those routines, but they seem very spontaneous. And
we did not rehearse these.
You didn't?
here's the irony. I couldn't get Rodney to do any rehearsal, and he likes to he does not like to improvise. So all of that is just very natural. It just happened authentically because, he's a quarterback. So he likes his plays drawn up, but he doesn't like those audibles. So when I was like, let me just there's a hot read coming off the corner because I love football, right? So I was like, listen, let's just go with it. And it would be a pulling teeth, but at the end of the night, like you said, people would be like, oh, we love seeing you, Rodney.
Oh yeah, that was fantastic.
Rehearse. If anything, it was frustrating for me because backstage we'd be fussing at each other. But that is something that was a lot of fun, and it is a highlight for me as well.
No, it was great, and spoken like a true quarterback's wife. You even know what an audible is, so I'm giving it up to Holly.
I'm with the territory.
All right, so last one of these, Holly. Who, past or present, would you most like to host at an intimate dinner party?
Oh, I would love to sit down with Harriet Tubman. I just have always been fascinated by her my whole life. And as as we've heard her story and as we've been able to, really get into her life and honor who she was and her bravery and amazing trajectory. It just was something that in my lifetime, I always grew up thinking about this woman, and just from a childhood of learning about heroes and our heroes, especially, she was the one that stood out. So, imagine sitting across from her, asking her questions about what it was like to bring those slaves, on across that railroad and with no internet, with no with no forms of communication, the bravery. So I think Harriet Tubman would be the number one person that I would want to sit down and have a conversation with and pick her brain. And I imagine she would be a very no nonsense person who would just probably answer my questions in 3-4 words. That's just in my mind, if I imagine me talking to her, but just a phenomenal person. But also, I've always wanted to sit down with Malcolm X like that. He would be another person that I would love to sit down and talk to and connect with. But I would have to say for sure, Miss Harriet Tubman.
Yeah, talk about inspiration for strength. What she endured. That would be a worthwhile conversation. So let's jump in here, and not to take anything for granted. It's been a crazy 18 months, almost a couple of years here. But how's everybody? How's the family? Your mom, Rodney, the kids, everybody good?
Everybody's good. My mom just turned 85. We hadn't seen her for a year. Went down, surprised her. That was really cool. She lives in Palm Springs. My brother Matt's down there now too, and so they live near each other. Kids are great. My daughter graduated from NYU during class of 2020, so she felt some kind of way about that. That was kind of rough because instead of Yankee Stadium, we were in our living room. Hey. Wow. Yeah, so it was like not what we looked forward to for those 4 years. And then RJ, her twin brother, his story is just so inspirational because, as you know, he's a young man with autism and who was told when he was 3 he would never really do much. And one of the things that he wouldn't do was have meaningful employment. And now he works for the Los Angeles Dodgers and was just presented his World Series ring. So I would say that's pretty meaningful.
Yeah.
And that story is just so awesome. And I feel so blessed to have RJ in my life. I always say I wouldn't change RJ for the world, but I would change the world for RJ. This boy has unlocked something in me beyond what we mamas do some pretty wild stuff for our kids, but
hold that, because I want to come back to RJ, because that to me is definitely a subject that I want to dive into a little bit with you a little bit more.
Let me wrap up the family. Yeah. So then Robinson's 18, and he over the quarantine or that family time that we had, this boy taught himself Japanese. He's always loved it, always been obsessed with anime. And so he would always watch anime in Japanese with the subtitles on. So he just started, I think he has that penchant for languages that I have. So over the 2020, he found a teacher in Osaka, an online teacher. He was talking to her just like we're talking. And for like 7-8 months, 3 times a week, he studied Japanese with her. And when I tell you this boy can speak Japanese so well, so now he just graduated from high school and he wants to do a gap year in Japan if we can figure this COVID thing out. But he's all applied and set up, so he wants to go to Japan. I'm very excited about that. And then the youngest guy is 16. All he cares about is getting his driver's license because COVID messed that up for him. So he's off. He wanted his license the day he turned 16. Mm-hmm. And so that's my group. And Rodney's doing great. He does radio every day. It's really been awesome for him. He's on AM 570 in LA, does a sports show called Lunchtime with Rogan and Rodney. And he's enjoying that. So, right now is a really positive time for us. I'm feeling, just so happy that the family everyone's in a good spot.
That's fantastic. And, just to stay on that for a minute, because, I had, with my son, moments this past year where, he's a musician set up to go out on tour. Everything got canceled. It was a tough time for him. And I had to, help him shift a little bit from feeling like this was only happening to you. It's like everybody's going through, right? Did you have any of that, Holly? And were you able to, your daughter who was graduating from NYU, yes, not being able to have like a real graduation? I mean, that could not have been a pleasant thing for her. That's something that she earned and looked forward to. But did you have to shift their thinking at all, or were they naturally just, no, I get it?
Oh, no, there was nothing natural about it. We didn't have all the answers. Mm-hmm. So we never experienced this as parents. As parents, we're expected to have answers. So when they would come to us and say, well, okay, how long is this going to last? We didn't know. Okay, am I going to be able to do this? Is this going to get canceled? We didn't know. So if there was any silver lining for us, it taught our kids the value of being able to pivot, the value of being able to go with the flow in the real sense of the word, manage disappointment, manage expectations. There were a lot of life lessons that these kids got. And yes, Rodney and I we didn't know. We were at a loss for words most of the time because we were looking at each other like, what do you think? What do you think? So yeah, there was so much disappointment in managing that with your kids and trying to get them to understand, like you told your son, that this is a global issue. This isn't just you and your little narcissistic 20-year-old bubble of space.
Me.
This is a global moment. Yeah. And that collectively, I think, will help them in the future. I mean, obviously, we wish none of this happened and all the people we could have them back. But if you had to find a silver lining, I think from a parental point of view, learning to pivot and learning to, things don't always work out the way you think they're going to work out is a valuable lesson to have for these young people.
No, I couldn't agree more. So I got so much I want to dive into with you. But before I do, I have to hear about this dream vacation, because I saw photos, I saw pictures, I saw places, things and people. And so tell me, Holly, how did this trip come about? Give us a taste of some of the places that you went and what you saw.
Okay, so this summer vacation for us started happening in 2013 when Magic Johnson, who's a longtime friend of all of ours, but he knew Rodney before I knew Rodney and me before Rodney knew me. So we go way, way back. His son, EJ, was the ring bearer in our wedding 26 years ago. We have a very, very long relationship with them. And I was
at your wedding, by the way.
Yes, and you were at my wedding. Yes, of course you were. And Brad, so, we would always see, Irving come back from these trips, and these yacht trips and stuff in Europe. He was going like 20 years before we got a chance to start going. Mm-hmm. And I would always joke with him, like, when are you going to take us? When are you going to take us? He said, well, Rodney he has to retire first because we go in July. That's training camp for him. Mm-hmm. So, the day Rodney Peete retired, Irvin was my first call. We're ready. Ready to go on the trip. And it still was another couple of years before we got invited. But essentially, he's been going on this trip for 29 years to Europe, to the south of France and Italy. And he discovered it and he just kept growing it. Started with a small boat and then kept growing it, staying longer and longer. And now he's on these 280 feet yachts and he's out in the middle of the Mediterranean for 4 or 5 weeks. It's amazing what he's done. And obviously, this man is phenomenal. He has earned every single thing he has ever gotten in his life. We've all seen him and watched what he's gone through. He's just a phenomenal human being. And so I don't know how we got the golden ticket to get on this, but this Magic Summer is next level. So I speak French. I speak fluent French. I did a year in Paris and majored in French. So, I mean, anytime I get a chance to be in France or Italy, I'm always feeling like, I'm just in the middle of some kind of dream that I cannot wake up from. But Magic takes friends out there. Well, the one thing that he wants is for other people to experience and be exposed to things that they might not otherwise have an opportunity to. So for his 60th birthday and for their 25th anniversary, they brought hundreds of people out and paid for everything and put people up. And a lot of people had never been to Europe. A lot of people have never been on these yachts and had experienced this whole thing. So he's so generous. I've just never met anybody like him. This trip in particular was the first time that we went to Greece. And we went on the Ionian seaside, so not the Mykonos, but Santorini. Not those Athens, not that side, but the other side where they're smaller, sleepier, more Venetian influenced islands that are just phenomenal, like right out of some kind of movie. And so we had a great time. We were there 3 weeks. I tried not to post so much. I overposted because I was just caught up in this moment. And I said, you know what? I want to share with people because I felt like I know I live vicariously through some people on social media, and I thought that would be fun.
Yeah, social media does have a little bit of a double sword that way, right? Is it,
yes.
Is it the look at me lifestyle
bragging,
and how,
or are you just sharing or are you oversharing?
And I have to tell you, it came off as sharing. It was great to be able to go through that experience vicariously with you. But, I want to ask you, so, you mentioned because Magic taking folks to places and living that kind of life and exploring and eating in restaurants where, he's had relationships with some of those chefs for a long time. But as Black folks traveling abroad at that level, are you less Black conscious abroad? Or do you still feel like, we're a bunch of Black folks over here, how they look? Or do you feel like a different level of, like Miles Davis or James Baldwin acceptance in Paris in the 50s? How does that feel?
Brad, I was not expecting that question, and that is an excellent question. So from my point of view, since I had in the early 80s spent a year abroad in Paris by myself, I didn't live with anybody. I was 19 and just thrown in there. And so I had already really had that sense of being exposed to so many different people, being raised in Philadelphia, in a pretty utopian environment of every melting pot in Mount Airy outside of Philly. And then we moved to Malibu. Okay. And it was like, all white. Like I was me and Flip Wilson's kids were like me and Matt and Flip Wilson's kids and maybe Junior Walker and the All-Star, his kids. Like we were the only Black kids in Malibu. So I've always been conscious about being the only Black person in the room or the only Black voice or the only Black person on a board. I've almost become used to it. So I know how to move in those spaces. However, there are times when I'm more conscientious of it than other times. And it's interesting because it's different when you're traveling with Magic Johnson. He's larger than life, literally and figuratively. So when we're getting off and going to Saint-Tropez or Capri or Positano, like they come running behind him, Magique, he's larger than life. So they automatically treat you as you're being special because you're with Magique, right? And then, we had LL Cool J with us and Samuel L. Jackson. I mean, it was a trifecta, right? And so we got that treatment. But it's interesting because when we would walk into some of these stores, I won't name any brands, but all them luxury stores, and one French brand in particular, but of course I won't name it. I would walk in before them just to now. Some of these people do know me. 21 Jump Street was big in France and stuff, but not like these guys, right? Of course. So I walk in And I see how they treat me. French people are snobby. We already know that. That's part of their DNA. We understand that. But it was this look like, you're not going to buy anything. And by the way, they start speaking French. And they start talking about me in French, assuming that I don't speak French, which I do. And so I watched how they respond to me. But then when Irvin and them would come in behind me, everything would shift and change. But the fun part was that I knew how to speak French. And once they realized that, the looks on their faces was worth the price of admission.
Right.
Right? Because I just heard you say that you didn't think I was going to be able to buy anything. And now you're like, oh, she's friends with him. Oh, go help her. Go ask her. Bring out the good bags for her. So I think the answer to your question is I'm always aware of it. And I think especially this year, just because there's been so much going on and the world came together for George Floyd and all these social issues. It wasn't like it was a domestic thing, like people protested in Europe, all around the world, in Asia for Black Lives Mattering. And so I felt a different shift this trip, that people were going out of their way to let us know that they were riding for us, if you will. That was different.
Not in a patronizing way, in a sincere way, or, I mean, obviously the interaction in the store was, that's conditioning, and some people just have that way of thinking, but you just felt generally like people really wanted to express, hey, we saw what happened, and, we feel this way.
Yeah, I think they just got a new awakening about the Black American experience, and they're processing it differently now. And so where it was in their subconscious, but not like watching those 9 minutes of video, that was just, you couldn't deny that. So I do feel a certain level of allyship that I didn't feel before going to Europe, that I had never felt before. Because, the whole, they love our culture, but they don't love, like we always felt the cultural thing. But this time I felt a shift in the way that they were interacting with us as Black people, because we were, at one point I'm like, are we the only Black folks moving through this? And we would be in Portofino or Positano or where these little places we would be, or Saint-Tropez. And we would see we were it. So, yeah. But it was fun because, especially with someone like, look, we had LL, Magic, and Sam. We had three iconic people in different fields, Hall of Famers we were with. So there was a point of connectivity for all of them. And it was just pretty dope. It's hard to put into words. It was pretty amazing. I don't
mind that was the ambassadorship that is, leading the way for us to come behind in future visits and have that trail have been blazed. I'm curious, Holly, a few of the pictures that I saw were kind of like Gordon Parks moments of you unsuspecting on a boat, looking off. And I'm curious, I know for me, I love to travel. I feel the, expansion of just going to places and getting on a plane and visiting somewhere new. But at the same time, it's also very introspective, right? Do you feel that way? Do you find that you kind of go deeper when you're away and you have a little distance from your homeland, your routine? Do you get introspective in those times?
Oh, yeah. We all, and then after the year we've all had, I just felt especially introspective, just being able to be out there, clear my head, have a different perspective of life, of all the little stupid shit that bothers me. Like, I don't even let me reconfigure everything. Let me pivot. Let me reset. And that's what that was. An opportunity to just clear my lens, when your glasses are dirty. And that's like one of my little Virgo pet peeves. I don't know about you. I can't stand somebody with some dirty glasses. And I'm that one that will walk around with a little spray bottle and clean up somebody's smudgy glass. Look, give me those. Put a glass car wash. That's what the analogy I would use. Like, that to
good metaphor.
Lenses, it was like cleaning lenses and looking out and seeing clearly. Yeah. And it was just clarity that I was able to get.
So, as you mentioned, you grew up, well, I think you left Philly when you were 10. You grew up in the Mount Airy section of Philly, which is a really historically very interesting part of Philadelphia. And I mentioned that your dad was in the entertainment business, and so were you very young. You moved from Philadelphia to Malibu, as you mentioned, which had to have been culture shock. But for some reason, I think the Robinsons were better equipped than some to handle that transition. But just give us a little bit of taste. Now, I saw you recently as I was, YouTubing, that's another story, but an interview you did with Johnny Carson on the Johnny Carson show. And you talked about seeing him on PCH going to high school. So just give a little bit of a taste of Malibu, what Malibu looked like back then to you just arriving from Philadelphia.
Well, first of all, thank God for Philly, because first of all, my dad was horrified. My mother was taking us to California. Their marriage was pretty much over. And my dad had, was just left Sesame Street and was doing some, television writing and some things. And so we were leaving Philadelphia in a stressful situation. We were in a Volvo station wagon, headed across the country. My mom, my brother, she was so gangster at that time, Brad. Like she had her head down. Everyone was like, that damn Delores, she ain't got nothing. She ain't gonna be nothing. Like she
was a school teacher initially, right?
School teacher. She taught pregnant high school students, particularly. And then she did some local, like on camera stuff in Philly on KYW, the local affiliate in Philly. And then when my dad's Sesame Street thing took off and the marriage kind of failed, then it was like, okay, I got to reinvent. So it was Cleavon Little, the legendary Cleavon Little from Blazing Saddles, who was our family friend, who said, come stay at my house in Malibu. I'm getting ready to go to Broadway. You can stay here for 6 months to a year and get your footing. So we all got in this car and drove to Malibu. I was kicking and screaming the whole time. She wouldn't bring our family dog, had to leave. When you're 9 years old.
Malibu must have sounded like Mars.
Oh, Malibu sounded like hell. It sounded like hell. I don't care. But there's a beach. I don't care. You are leaving my my dog. And so I negotiated to bring the hamster. So we bring the hamster, but Delores won't let the hamster in any of the motels. Why? They're not going, you could put a hamster in your pocket. So my hamster froze in the car in Ohio. Okay, I'm 9 years old. This is so traumatic at this point. We get to Mojave Desert finally. She says, I don't think the hamster's dead. Like I'm in denial. He's frozen, right? Teeth out, fingernails up, the hamster's dead. I'm in denial. Delores is just gangsta savage, just trying to get us a new life. She drops the hamster in the Mojave Desert. She tells me for a better life. And so the hamster goes to the Mojave. I still to this day cannot drive through the Mojave Desert, the trauma.
Traumatized.
So we laugh about this hamster because she's like, okay, you know what? You and that damn hamster, I had to do what I had to do. And, I had to be savage because now look at this life that you have now. You think you would have been on Jump Street? You think you would have been on? You would have done none of this if it wasn't for me. You got to sacrifice that hamster. So we get to Malibu. We roll up at Cleavon's house. It's on the beach in Topanga. And as soon as we pull the blinds up on the beach house, there's a naked woman, like a Bo Derek type of naked woman on a horse. White woman, big boobs, her hair's braided, kind of like Bo Derek. And shoot, it might have been Bo Derek. I got to check the date on that. Matt Robinson saw that.
I was about to say, Matt was right out the door.
He was like, California, here we are. I'm still moping about the hamster. He's like, man, screw your hamster. I'm just going to go out on the beach right quick. He learned how to surf. He learned how to, Matt, he was so gregarious. He was like, so we go to school and I'm the only, like one of maybe two Black girls in Webster Elementary School. Nobody wanted nothing to do with me. They all wanted to touch my hair, just the typical stuff. I was miserable. One girl called me a black witch, like the second day of school. I was mortified. We come home from school. My mom goes, so how was school, you guys? And I'm like, someone called me a black witch and my hamster's dead. And where's our dog? And I want to go back to Philly. So Matt, how was your day? Oh man, I had a great day, and I got invited to go on a ski trip with my friend Chad McQueen. Oh, who's that? Oh, I guess his dad is Steve McQueen.
Right.
They basically adopted Matt. Steve, people thought Steve McQueen and Ally McGraw were Matt's parents. Like, so he just adapted. I was miserable. It took me a while. By the time I got to 8th grade, I finally, gave in. But it was hard, Brad. It was hard, and I just couldn't roll with it like Matt. But he started surfing and just
that's too funny. I totally would have envisioned the Matt side of the story, but I would not have known how you were adapting, and that's a very funny thing to hear. So as I mentioned, I started YouTubing, and getting ready for this, and, watching some of your old 21 Jump Street stuff and some of the old interviews that you did, the Carson one. You were so charming, and, you had just gotten 21 Jump Street and, talked about seeing him in Malibu. Then I watched you on Arsenio and various Holly Rod events, and then In Vogue. And then I went down that In Vogue rabbit hole, and I had a crush on Cindy. I had to stop. At that point. Like, okay.
We've gone too far now.
Yeah, let's stop here. It was like started at noon, and by 6 o'clock in the evening, I figured it was time to, to call it a day. But what stands out for you about getting 21 Jump Street, Holly, and reaching like a different level of or level of fame and in Hollywood? And I would imagine things kind of shifted at that point.
I was graduating from Sarah Lawrence, and you mentioned earlier, you were like, I didn't know you sang. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a singer, and everyone on college campus knew me as Holly the singer. No one thought, oh, you're going to go become an actress or a TV actress. I wanted to sing. So that's what I would do. I would go down and sing in these nightclubs in New York, and then take the train back up to Sarah Lawrence. And I was working singer, waitress type of thing, because I really wanted to get a record deal and do that. So when I graduated in my senior year, before I graduated, I did a movie called Howard the Duck. Now, Howard the Duck is now making a comeback, right? It's the whole Marvel thing. But back then it was just a big, giant George Lucas flop. It was $100 million movie. But in this movie, I played a singer in a rock group, a girls group called Cherry Bomb. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm graduating from Sarah Lawrence, and I'm going right into this group, and I'm going to be in this fictional group, but I really sing. And it was a whole thing. So I graduated and the movie flopped. And I was like, oh, let me rethink this. I was going to go back to graduate school at Columbia. I applied, was ready to get back in, wanted to get my master's. And my mom calls me, and now she's managing at this time, right? And she's been managing for years before this. And so she's like, there's this new show, new network, whole new network called the Fox Network. And there's a bunch of shows they're launching. And there's this show about these young cops. It shoots in Vancouver, where I had no idea there was any civilization north of Seattle. I did not know anything about Canada. So go out for it. And I went out for it. And, after a long auditioning process, got that part, thinking I'm just going to do this to make money to pay for my demos. They asked me to sing the theme song to 21 Jump Street. So I did that. That's kind of iconic. Did you run into that in your YouTubing?
Oh, I did.
Gonna learn something when we meet you at school. Say jump down on Jump Street. Say jump down on Jump Street.
Yes.
Okay. So that was fun. And I was like, okay. So I got a record deal with Sylvia Rome back in the day. And ended up, that's how one of the ways I met En Vogue, became the unofficial fifth member of the En Vogue. But anyway, 21 Jump Street was amazing because, first of all, Johnny Depp was the replacement of another actor who shot a whole pilot. Then the network decided to replace this actor and brought Johnny in. So we were all looking at him like he was the new kid on the block. He had nothing then. He had really barely done anything. And so when it started to hit, it was just pretty amazing. I was only in my early 20s. And the next thing you know, I'm on, like you said, the Carson show, sitting across Johnny Carson, not some of them other cats that came after him, but this was Johnny Carson. Okay. So that was a moment for me where I was like, people say, oh, what's the moment you think you made it? That was that moment for me. Because I was like, this is Johnny Carson.
Yeah,
and the irony of the story I was telling, seeing him when I was driving to school and seeing him next to me in his car, he wasn't paying no attention to me, but I would just smile at him and whatever. And pretend I was drag racing Johnny Depp.
Pretend.
So these are moments like you tell the Philly girl who's crying over her hamster that, you know, in 9 years, you're going to be on the Johnny Carson show telling them a story about how you drag race them down the PCH. These are the things that you go, wow, like, how did this really happen?
Kind of surreal. Yeah. You know, before we move on to another subject, I just, you know, I often think about having spent, you know, 30 years plus years in LA, that, you know, New York was very, you know, if anything ruled New York, it was the modeling industry and money. Right. It's like money, Wall Street. And LA kind of strikes me as status kind of rules, right? The perception of connections, the perception of closeness to whomever. Do you find that to be true, Holly, or are you kind of existing in an altitude that's kind of above that and you don't really sense that because you've been well known and your family's been well known for so long? Do you see it as cliquish and status conscious that way, or not so much?
Absolutely. That would be absolutely correct. Very status conscious. And the comparison to New York is so dead on, you know, especially back in the day. And when my dad was living in New York and it was all about, and can I don't know if you're going to mention it, but, you know, one of my favorite things when I think about you and Howard, when I think about your dad, my dad lived above the cellar, your dad's restaurant, for years.
Right.
And that just going down underneath his building and getting his food and loving that restaurant was one of the highlights. And my dad, everything about New York he loved, and was one of the highlights of that. But I would say yes, for sure, that there's still a status game going on out here. Who you know, who your circles are, who you're hanging out with, for sure. I mean, that is definitely for sure. And it's interesting because I never, you know, tried or made attempts to be in anybody's circles. My circles have just sort of evolved organically, that my friends are just who they are, who they've evolved to be over the years. So there's never been any major play, but I do see people jockeying for position a lot out here. And I do think that is part of the game. And I'm just thankful that I don't have to do that, or that I don't need to do that, or because of the way I was raised, or because of the people that my mom introduced me to so early in my life, or the things my brother and I were able to do so early in life, got us in rooms that we otherwise might not be in. So we can kind of roll with anybody, right? We can just kind of be around anyone and communicate with anybody and connect with anyone. And I think that has been helpful, but there is definitely a status game out here for sure. I'm not as aware of it on a daily basis, but when I think about it, that's very true.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely one of the things that, you know, I've always admired about you and your family. You know, that you guys certainly are, and I view you as kind of a unit, but, you know, you definitely are thought of as, you know, well-known folks and well-connected, but you were very inclusive. You know, people, I think, always have felt like you're accessible. And I can tell you as a pedestrian, as a citizen, I appreciate the accessibility. So I opened a nightclub in '89 and got to know a few of your friends, Leela Rashan, lovely Leela Rashan, who talked about you quite a bit, and Vivica Fox. You know, those folks used to always mention you a bit. And I know you've been asked this a lot of times. So how did you meet Rodney? You guys were set up, correct?
So Leela Rashan introduced Rodney to me. And it's so funny. We were just talking about this over vacation. We were like going around talking about how we all met and some of the early days. We went to oh my gosh, why am I blanking? Rodney. R&B Live. Thank you. Rodney's like, R&B Live. I blanked for a minute, but I knew between you and him, I would get that. We went to R&B Live. We were kind of set up. Rodney was bothering Leela. He wanted to meet me, and he was very aggressive in pursuing me. And Leela kind of facilitated that, made that happen. So we went to R&B Live. There was a singer performing. She wasn't quite on it that night, and we were kind of like, you know, messing, you know, with each other about her. And you know, when you don't like a brother, when you don't like a guy, you don't have to eat cute around them. Right. So when my French fries came, I doused them with hot sauce and was like, and I was killing them fries because, I wouldn't worry about nothing in my teeth because I liked Rodney, but NFL, it was not, he wasn't someone I wanted to, I was like, oh, I'm going to get him.
Yeah.
So that, of course, he was, how you guys are when we don't like you, that's when you really go after us. So he saw me eating them fries, not caring. And he was like, I gotta go after this girl. And I went on an eat, pray, love trip to Bali, Indonesia by myself, very frustrated about my romantic experiences. And, I was in that, I want a man like this. Who's my soulmate? Who's my person? I was in that space. And then when I came back, Rodney Peete was still there, still knocking at my door. And so that's when I decided to give him a shot, and that's it. But Leela is the one when Rodney would get on my nerves or do something to piss me off, I would call her up and cuss her out.
And blame her.
Yeah, it's all your fault. All these kids I got, it's all your fault, Leela. But we honor her. We just celebrated our 26th anniversary.
Yeah, congratulations.
And we thank you. And we had a nice little small dinner, and we celebrated Leela for making that connection.
I mean, you guys together are just phenomenal. So I just want to talk a little bit about, I guess, the segments on YouTube that I saw, Holly, that really, really just touched me. Just resonated with me were your moments with RJ. And this was from clips from the show that you guys did, the reality show. And two that stood out for me, that my very good friend, Adam Katz, who Rodney knows well, has a son with Asperger's. You know Adam as well. And I spent quite a bit of time with his son, Sammy, and, witnessed up close some of the hardships, play dates getting canceled and, hard time making friends. And so one of these, and I watched RJ, and I listened to you and watched you, and how calm you listened so well to what he had to say. You were such a great listener. And then you spoke to him, and he clung on every word of what you were saying. And it was like the Bible to him. Oh. Your response was what got him through that thing that he was going through in that moment. He had made a comment. He was upset over some comments that he had read on social media, something that he had posted and had seen. So I know you're tough. Rodney's a football player, competitor, hard guy. Sweet smile, but underneath that, he's a killer. And I know how I feel. I want to go out and beat up the bad guy when somebody does anything bad to one of my friends. But you're maintaining this very calm exterior, and you're giving RJ exactly what he needs. But I'm curious, what's going on for you internally as you're processing this hurt that this child that you love so much is experiencing?
Oh, well, you develop another gear, right? You develop another gear. It's not on your gear shift when you get in the car. So you have to carve that out. Like, what is that other gear you have to get into to advocate ferociously for your child? As moms and dads, we advocate for our kids. We move mountains for them. We do everything for them. And we try to create their lives. Some of us snowplow things out of their way for them so they don't have to experience the hardships. We experience it. But when you have a son or a daughter who cannot properly communicate themselves or has a special need and they become discriminated against, it is extra hard. Then when you factor in the intersectionality between autism and being a Black boy or a Black young man, you've got a whole nother slew of problems. So what I had to do was compartmentalize, carve out, they say we don't use a lot of our brain. I had to figure out an area of my brain that was dedicated just to RJ. How do I navigate life for him in a way that he can understand it, that he can advocate for himself, that he has a group around him, a fortress, a team around him that supports him. So I don't really know. I think there's just an extra, like a gear. It's like an extra gear. And you actually create that extra gear when you're a parent of a special needs kid, because you have to think for him and protect his heart and his soul and everything. So with RJ, some of these issues that I've seen him go through, whether it's like you were talking about with with Adam's son, like not the play dates, the heartbreaking, not having friends and, not having, a girlfriend or not being able to, navigate life in a certain way or letting people take advantage of you. These boys at junior high school took his money and then made him say vile things to girls that could have gotten him in major trouble. And he doesn't come home and tell me these things. Like he doesn't, A, want to articulate that to me, and B, he wanted these friends. So you have to just have eyes and ears in every place. And you were talking about how he was holding on to every word. I mean, this is a kid, or me listening to him so well, this is a kid that didn't have words. So every time this boy speaks, every single word is like a gift from God. So when I hear him talk, and there's sometimes, listen, now he comes home and he wants to talk balls and strikes, Dodgers, because he's their clubhouse attendant. So he knows everything about the Dodgers and everybody on the team, their birthdays, you name it. And there's times when I'm just tired or doing everything and I have to literally remind myself, I shift into that gear and go, this is a boy who wasn't talking and had no ability to have a meaningful conversation with you. A friend of mine is he's come so far and I'm so blessed and so happy for him. And that's part of what fuels a lot of my Holly Foundation work, is because I want, to help these families navigate this journey. But a friend of mine is in Martha's Vineyard right now. And he just called me. He was like, yeah, I'm out here in the Oak Bluffs and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I got triggered. And I was like, why am I triggered? And I remembered in Oak Bluffs in 2000, when RJ was just 3 years old, we rented a house there for the summer. We thought, we're going to do the little bit, the vineyard thing, Inkwell. We're going to do all that whole thing. And then we rented that house. And then at one point he got away from the house. He ran away from me into traffic. And there's these curves around Oak Bluffs that you can't see, they're blind. You can't see it. And I was screaming his name. Rodney was behind me in a house screaming at me. I'm running to keep up with his little fast legs. He's smiling and laughing because he can't read the anger and or hear the fear and terror in my voice. And by the grace of God, by the time he got to that middle lane in that blind curve, there was no car there. I snatched him up, pulled him out, and just my first instinct was to pull down his pants and beat his ass. That was my first instinct. And I don't know why that wasn't something that I'd ever done before, but I just wanted that moment to be crystallized in his mind. I didn't know how else to do it. And I was triggered. And I was like, wow. When I was talking to my friend, I was like, that Martha's Vineyard moment was so scary. I thought I was going to lose my son's life and my life because of autism, because of the fact that he could not process my emotions in that moment. So when I see him now having the ability to look at my face when I give him that look, he goes, what?
He's reading something. Yeah.
Are you mad?
Yeah.
Why are you saying it like that, Mom? Like even hearing that's progress. And he's 23 and he still kind of has that little boyish kind of energy. But I have the ability to adapt and pivot to his whole experience. I don't know what my life would be without RJ and the struggle that we've been through and watching his journey and then sharing it. I wanted to share it on the reality. People, oh, you're doing a reality show. That's terrible. You're Rodney going to get divorced. No, I wanted to show a young man, a young Black boy, how his family rallies around him and how we listen and talk to him, because there's so much underrepresentation of autism on TV in so many different ways.
Yeah. And I know,
I don't know if I answered your question, Brad.
No, perfectly. No, Holly, absolutely perfectly. And the other thing that I wanted to just mention quickly is the meeting that I saw that you had with Kamala when she was a state senator. And, the advocating for some additional identification on a driver's license for kids that might have autism or might have Parkinson's because of their inability to read social signals, and an officer may misread that, and the danger that puts them in. Unlike, someone who doesn't have those issues.
Yeah, I mean, that meeting with Kamala that we were able to document was right before she just won the Senate, and then she was of course, down the line, she was headed for the White House, and so a lot of that got put on hold. But that was a great meeting, because we want to get RJ's Law in the books, which would identify to a cop, if he pulls you over, that you have autism or Parkinson's. Because as I see my son driving, I mean, the panic and fear I have of him getting pulled over and what that will mean, it just scares me. And I want to do something, in honor of him, not in memory of him. Yeah. So I always think of that like as something that would be really helpful. And then it was then Senator Harris, now Vice President Harris, which is amazing, that she mentioned the Parkinson's piece, because I'm not sure if you know that Matt has Parkinson's, right?
Yeah,
so
Matt
my brother Matt has been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he's had it for 5 or 6 years now. And when he's driving Parkinson's, his symptoms can come off like he's drunk or he's not connected. Mm-hmm. He's a Black man in America. So I'm hoping that the RJ's Law will get a little bit more traction soon. And so thank you so much for bringing it up, because I think that it's something that could be really helpful for so many.
Yeah, well, definitely a worthwhile cause to support. So certainly whatever I can do.
You really did go down a rabbit hole. You saw everything.
And, with Matt, I text with Matt, and during COVID, I would tune into his DJ sets.
Oh, yeah.
And we have a little running funny joke between us. He always plays Funky Nassau for me because of a little funny thing, a little insider joke that we have.
I love it.
And then your mom and I have had our own unique relationship. She and I sat together at Diane Carroll's birthday. Unfortunately, we lost Diane in 2019, but your mom and I went to a little intimate dinner party that Diane had at the Four Seasons a few years ago, and your mom's running commentary at that dinner party sitting next to me was hilarious. She was just nonstop. Your mom can commentate with the best of them. So that was a good Dolores.
Yeah,
memory.
Howard Cosell, Chris Collinsworth, nobody got anything.
No, Dolores can go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, she is, and I'm really trying to convince her to get this. She has about 7 books in her, Brad, and I'm so frustrated because I feel like she should be on her 3rd or 4th by now. But I'm always encouraging her and to write a book, because she's a pretty phenomenal lady.
Yeah, she really is. Your family is incredible. So, Holly, before I let you go, just tell folks where they can go to support you and Rodney and the great work that you guys do. Where can they find you on social media and jump in and support?
Well, I'm all over social media at Holly R. Peete, 2 E's in the middle, 1 E at the end. And you can go to hollyrod.org, and that is, our nonprofit. We are really focusing on our RJ's Place initiative now. So RJ's Place is we built it finally down, and it's sort of in the Glendale area, but in LA. And it's where we support families impacted by Parkinson's and autism, but we also have job training seminars there. And our goals right now with Holly Rod is to really help get these young people jobs. Now more than ever, so many corporations are really understanding the value of hiring inclusively. And RJ's experience at the Dodgers, every time I I'll post something on social media like, to one of the players, thank you for doing so much for him or embracing him. They're like, you don't know what he does for us. Mm-hmm. When he's in this clubhouse, he lifts us in a way that is intangible. So stop thanking us and let us thank you for your son. You can imagine how that feels to me as a mom with the journey we've been on. Mm-hmm. But we know that right now, so many organizations and corporations are hiring our young people with autism, and they just need some training. They just need a chance. They need to be connected with the right people. They need proper management. But when you hire them, they're going to get the job done in a different way that you didn't think about, and they will increase your bottom line and make it a better place to work.
I hear you on that, Holly. So last thing before I let you go, and just all beautiful, really worthwhile stuff. Your story, your family story is just so touching. We've touched on some of the glamour stuff, and you live a really interesting life, a privileged life, I would say. But obviously, you got a lot to balance. You're a mom, and you've got, a few kids and a husband and a life, and you have challenges like the rest of us. So what do you do, Holly? Is it meditation? Is it prayer? combination of all those things? How do you keep yourself lifted?
The balance for me comes in meditation. Even if I get in 10 minutes before I get out of the bed, setting my intentions for the day, just affirming that, whatever I do today, there's going to be a positive element to it. Breathing is very, very important. So yoga, meditation, as much as I can, but meditation every morning is so helpful to me. And doesn't mean when you get up and your day starts, things don't go wrong and the day doesn't get crazy. It just means that you've given yourself a moment to intentionally set your affirmations, set your intentions for the day, and then that just makes the day move cleaner for me. It just makes it move smoother. And then I'm breathing. I don't get stressed as fast. But when you have, so many people to look out for and to make sure everybody's good, if you're not right, none of it's going to be right. And so that self-care piece is something that I think that people have really, you cannot overstate how important that is.
Like they tell you on the plane, put your mask on first, right? Before you go to help others. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm no good if I'm not right. I can't help solve everybody else's problems if I don't have, the food, the emotional food and energy to push through my day. So and then, just really blessed to have such a great team around me. My family is just amazing. We're not perfect. And people even see the reality show and go, oh, you guys are so, no, we got our issues. Rodney and I, we got our issues. Kids, we got issues. But I think the resolve to fix things internally and collectively and really create, obviously we have a lot of football and team metaphors going on in this family, but to really huddle up and get a game plan and execute the game plan and all of that, somebody might throw a flag on the play. But in the end, I am, I realize, I am the quarterback of this team. No offense, Rodney Peete, but I am. And I got to make sure that, my game plan is straight. So just in case you didn't have enough football analogies in your day, I've given you more than a dozen. No, yes, you did. And we're moving the ball downfield. We're one foot in front of the other. We're moving the chains. We're all that.
It's a metaphor for life.
It works.
I have leaned all the way into it. So I'm like, you know what? Of course, your quarterback's wife, you're going to do that. But I have leaned all the way in. And my kids know that about me. They know that, your mom's a little bit crazy. She's a little bit all over the place. But in the end, I'm going to listen. And let me just say one thing, because, we talked about that extra gear that I had to go into in order to really really focus on RJ. Sometimes in that process, the other kids get left out. And I say this because there may be people listening that either are a sibling of someone with special needs or know someone who is a sibling that has felt somehow a little cheated. And my daughter has been I'm trying to get her to blog because it's unbelievably fascinating, her experience being the sibling of a twin with autism, because she wasn't the squeaky wheel. And so she feels like she sacrificed and missed things and maybe missed a few diagnoses of her own self in her life because it was RJ. And so if you are a parent with a child who just got diagnosed and you're trying to figure out how to navigate your other children, find time for them. It doesn't have to be a big, fabulous vacation. Just even it's movies, even go get your nails done. Just take the other sibling and give them that one-on-one time, because looking in their eyes and listening to them is really important. And I think because when you get hit with a diagnosis like autism, I went into gangsta mama mode, right? And I did neglect Ryan in a lot of ways. And listen, the girl has had an amazing life. She's traveled to every continent in the world. She graduated from NYU. Life is good. But in the end, there were moments as a child where she felt some kind of way. And so I'm always, when I'm counseling other parents who just get this diagnosis, just saying, if you have other kids, just find that one-on-one time with them. It's going to really, really mean a lot to them down the line.
Holly Robinson Peete. Thank you so much, Holly, for joining me. Please give Rodney a big pound and a hug from me and your brother, Matt, and give your mom a hug. It was so great seeing you and talking to you. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you, Brad. I love you so much. I'm so glad that we have a chance to talk like this. I love your podcast, and let's keep in touch. Sending
For
you
sure.
big hugs to you and your family.
Thanks so much, Holly. So here we are with Ambassador Shabazz and our segment we call How We Move, Holly Robinson Peete.
You know, she's absolutely dear to me. I was very close to her dad. We were all in New York. And as she mentioned, off air, the relationship with Stan Lathan, whom I already also knew, and Cleavon Little, who was actually my cousin. So the worlds were small. Her father, very powerful. And I got to listen to the father whose children had gone west, his pride of his children, his love for his family. So my emotional attachment to his kids are really having watched and listened to a father whose life was changing without them. And he just loved, he bragged, he dreamed for them. And so when I moved to Los Angeles, I couldn't wait to share. Now, what's interesting is that their mom was the first Black talent agent in Los Angeles. And her first primary client was LeVar Burton, who is the famed Kunta Kinte. Mm-hmm. And people think of Reading Rainbow or this back and forth.
Now the host of Jeopardy.
The host of Jeopardy, but he was an 18-year-old student at UCLA. And, my godfather is the one that wrote Roots, Alex Haley. So the world started to connect independently, yet the world was just so small, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm in touch with her as often as I can. She's an amazing young lady, as is her brother. And I just recall the heartbeat of a dad who loved his children so much and wanted the best for them. And they are everything he would have wanted them to be. Really powerful.
Talk about the funny connections. I had forgotten actually that her dad lived above the cellar.
Yeah, right.
I knew that my father knew their father, but I'd forgotten that specific connection.
Yeah.
That's a funny coincidence.
That's exactly right. And, and then he moved out to Los Angeles. And the interesting thing with Parkinson's, both her father and Muhammad Ali kind of discovered themselves on this path around the same time, late 30s, early 40s, fit in every other kind of way, could not understand what this debilitation was, very slow introduction. And knowing both men very well, fondly, powerfully, their inner spirits and the fortitude. So, when you think about mind over matter and how long they got to live with a condition that people at first did not know how to handle, notwithstanding the debilitation, the spirit and the mindset and the will to put one foot in front of the other. And so even with that, there's an organization called Girl Trek. Have you heard of it?
No.
Girl Trek. So it was established, two young college students in Los Angeles, two sisters in 1996, found themselves combining Tupac, Nikki Giovanni, and self-care. How do you do it? How do you merge it? I mean, we think we're talking about it now, 25 years later, but this kind of recurrence of how we fit in the world, the same way Holly Robinson Peete stated that she has to start her day with meditation and focus in order to restart. I think people find their ways doing that. So girltrek.org, I want people to go online. They have now combined all of that so-called churning. Imagine they're grown women now, but a deeper call to action. They tied it into a movement of engagement and a radical self-care, and they support rallies and causes. And so it brings a fellowship of people walking together, but they are going to do those miles. And they had something called We Are Harriet in the National Mall and Reclaiming Our Streets and the like. And they're in 51 cities across the US. And there's a page, if you go to Girl Trek and you go onto the area that says walk and you scroll down to 100 radical acts of self-care. And it breaks down ways in which you can consider that, whether it's the sweat equity, the sanity, the soul, and the joy. What on this list that they've pre-authored it matches yours, your kind of equilibrium to wellness, and you're taking charge of wellness. And what do you add to that? So very exciting. I'm looking forward to adding their chapters in other places, and we're about to go international. We talked about how to bring that kind of force of camaraderie and footsteps, one foot in front of the other, into other nations, other villages, other towns.
All right. So
yeah.
that's Girl Trek, TREK?
TREK.org.
.org.
.org, and just scroll down and you get to see all of the things that they've done and the chapters. There may be a chapter in your space, in your town, and or you can start one.
Well, all right. A little extra tip on self-care from Ambassador Shabazz. And thank you for those remembrances in your dad and Matthew Robinson. That's a
Love them.
touching relationship, I know. So thank you. And Muhammad Ali.
And Muhammad Ali.
Yep.
And the list goes on. That's the thing. That's what's really important. And these young ladies with Girl Trek as well. And what Holly Robinson and her dear husband have forged ahead, not stopping just as Hollywood royalty, so to speak, or a power couple, but impacting real issues and amendments on behalf of the wellness of certain populations.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah, no question. Ambassador Shabazz, how we move. That's how we move. Thank you so much.
All righty.
Corner Table Talk is hosted by Brad Johnson, produced by Brad and Linda Ailes Johnson. Theme music, Life Goes On by Bryce Vine. Executive producer, Ken Johnson. Find the Corner Table Talk podcast wherever you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe, rate, and leave a comment. Corner Table Talk is a Mean Old Lion Media production.